So from here starts your speaking test. This is the speaking mock test of the International English Language Testing System taking place in Ross IELTS Academy. The candidate is Jorge. The candidate number is 01413278. The examiner is Luisa Meinusch, examiner number 443577. Good morning. My name is Luisa. Would you please tell me your full name?
Good morning. I'm Jorge Aguirre Duque.
And can I see your identification, please?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. Then let's get started with part one. So in the first part of the exam, I will ask you some personal questions. First, I'd like to ask about your home. Where is your home?
Well, my home is in Bogota, in a neighborhood named Citadel.
And what changes would you like to bring to it?
No many changes. This apartment is kind of new, and I have the chance to redecorate the apartment a couple of years ago, and I'm very satisfied, very happy with my apartment right now.
Do you plan to live in the same house in the future?
Yes, I guess so. I mean, it's very complicated to predict what's going to happen. One day I expect to get married. So maybe if I have a family, of course, I'm going to be thinking about to move to a bigger place.
Now let's move on to talk about street markets and shops. Are street markets commonly seen around in your country?
Yes, but for instance, here in Bogota, the place where I live, are very common to find shopping centers. However, you can find some, main streets where you can find a lot of shops and stores, restaurants, and things like that.
Do people in your country freely go to open air markets?
It depends on the region or the city, because there are some cities with very nice weather. So, for them, it's very easy to go to these kind of streets. But in a place, like Bogota, it's a little bit difficult because it rains a lot. So we prefer to go to shopping centers.
What benefits do street markets have over single retail shops?
Well, my guess is that maybe for some people is easier to go to a place like that because they can compare prices. And by it, I'm trying to say that you can go to one store, maybe ask for the price of an item, and check in another store. And it's good for your pocket. I mean, when it comes to money, you can save. Maybe checking who has the best price.
Now let's move on to talk about voice. Can you recognize the voices of people you know over phone calls?
Yes, I think I'm very good on doing that.
Why?
Because I'm good listening. I like to listen to music and that kind of thing. So I guess I've been having kind of a training. So for me, it's very easy to identify the voice of a person. Besides, I'm a psychologist, so part of my work is to listen. So I think I'm good on it.
Have you ever tried noticing a bird's voice?
I don't get it. I'm sorry. What is that? Bird?
A bird?
Oh, yeah. Okay. I really don't pay attention to that kind of thing, even though, in my neighborhood, we have a lot of green areas. Normally, I'm, very busy in a hurry trying to go to my workplace. So I really don't pay attention to, the singing of birds or things like that.
Do scary voices in movies make you fearful?
To be honest, I don't like that kind of movies. So I never watch that kind of movies.
Okay, thank you so much. That's it for part one. That means now we're moving on to part two. So in part two, I'm going to give you a card with a topic, and I'd like you to talk about that for 2 minutes. Before you start, you'll have 1 minute to think about what you're going to say, and you can make notes to help if you wish. Do you understand?
Yes, I do.
Perfect. Then give me just a second to share my screen.
Sure, no problem.
So you can see your cue card. All right, here we go. Okay, can you see your cue card right now?
Yes.
Great. So you should describe a time you were at a farm or farmland or met a farmer. And your 1 minute of preparation starts right now. All right, your 1 minute is over. You may start speaking now.
Okay, I'm gonna talk about a time when I was on a farm. So the first thing that I want to say is actually I grew up on a farm. I lived on a farm my 10 first years of life, and it was a really good experience. So the farm was located in the southwest of Colombia. It was a coffee plantation farm, and I had a lot of fun. I have very good memories of that time. Mm, at that time, well, I was focused on studying, of course. My parents didn't give me, kind of activities or short or duties, related to the farm. However, when I had vacation, I had the possibility to help, milking the cows and doing a lot of things there. But it was something pretty cool, pretty fantastic. I also want to mention that for me to be there was pretty cool because at that time I was living with my parents and with my sister, and we have also a lot of cousins going to the farm to visit us. So I think I have a lot of good memories, the possibility to play with my cousins and really, to grow up being really happy and being really free. Something good about this thing is that in Colombia we don't have seasons, so we have a very nice weather year round, and in that part of the country there is not a lot of rain or a cold weather. So I have the possibility to ride bicycle there, go swimming to a river, fishing. It was something pretty cool because we have the possibility to do a lot of activities outdoor. And as I said before, I really, kept in my heart very good memories and very good lessons that I learned from my parents, because I also saw them working so hard, having work ethic,
Thank
and it's
you.
something that I try to keep.
That's your 2 minutes. All right, I will stop sharing my screen now. So that was it for part 2. So now we're moving on to part 3. All right, so we've been talking about a time you were at a farm or farmland or met a farmer. And now I'd like to ask you some questions that are related to this. Are the number of farmlands across the globe declining?
Well, the first thing that I want to say is I'm not an expert, on this subject. So I'm going to be guessing. But I will say that maybe yes, is declining, at least based on my experience here in my country. I think that people right now have the tendency to live in cities, in the cities, and they are living, the countryside.
Do people usually visit farms as a part of their leisure activity in your country?
Yes, right now we have an area in our country where that kind of tourism is very popular. So for people who live in the city, especially young people or kids, it is very popular to go to a farm, because they haven't seen anything like that before, and they really enjoy it.
What are the advantages of having large farmlands in a region?
Okay, let me think a little bit about it. What would be the advantages of that? Well, I guess it's important because we can have fresh products in the market. So if in a place there are only factories, I think is very complicated to get fresh vegetables and things like that. So I will say that maybe we can have fresh products, and that will be, one of the advantages.
And could you also name some disadvantages?
Disadvantages about it, I guess for some people will be maybe like that they are not taking advantage of the space. And the thing that I'm trying to say by it is, for some people, maybe it's better to have factories, because they can make more money. So maybe someone will say that.
Do you think farmers or local farmers nowadays are appreciated enough?
It depends on the place. I guess in a city like Bogota, we do appreciate farmers because we know that they work so hard, and sometimes the quality of life that they have is not the best. So they work so hard, and maybe the reward for that is not good enough. But I guess in other places, maybe they are not appreciated, basically because they are perceived like second class citizens.
Do you think that farmers should be given more financial aid by the governments?
Absolutely. I do believe that they should be helped more by the government. I know in some countries like in Europe or in Canada, the government have a lot of programs to help farmers, but in other countries it's a little bit more difficult to do something like that. So especially here in Colombia, I know that people who are in the business of coffee, they receive some help from the government, but it's not in all the cases.
How can we improve the skills of farmers in a region?
From my perspective, a good way to help them to develop more skills is training them. I know it sounds obvious, but I believe that they sometimes need, a teacher, a person, a tutor who go to the farms and help them to do things in a better way, to be more efficient. And I believe that's something that governments should implement.
Okay, thank you so much. This is the end of your test now.
Okay,
Right,
thank
so
you.
you can take a deep breath and relax now. Exactly. So I'm going to take a minute or two to add up your overall score. I'll mute myself for that, but I'll be right back with you, and then we'll talk about your feedback and see how you did today. All right?
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right. So let's see how you did today. At first, before I talk about your IELTS criteria, I quickly want to give you a general idea of parts 1, 2, and 3, how you did there according to what's required. All right. So part 1, as I mentioned in the beginning, is personal questions, meaning it's supposed to be rather short questions, short answers. In this case, that means about 3 sentences, right? More or less, depending on how long your sentences are. I think some of your answers here were a little bit too short because you only gave me about 1 sentence, and then others were a little bit too long where you went into more detail. So I think for you, it would now be about finding this medium length. As I said, you can, more or less 3 sentences is totally fine. Find just the middle of what you did today, and then I think you're going to be fine in part 1. Part 2, then, all about talking at length. I didn't feel like you had any problem doing that. You just kept on talking. That's great. That's important part, right? Because in part 2, you should be talking until the 2 minutes are over, right? Otherwise, you will lose points in both fluency and coherence. and your lexical resource. So, you know, always fill the full 2 minutes. And then part 3 is all about coherent, longer answers. This is where you're supposed to go into more depth, right? Go into more details and elaborate on your ideas, develop your topic really. I would say in general, your answers in part 3 were a little bit too short. You could have gone on for longer. Just show the examiner that you can develop your topic a little bit further. I mean, not as long as you would do in part 2, but, you know, into that direction. All right, so that was it very quickly for the 3 parts. And now we can move on to your 4 IELTS criteria, being your fluency and coherence, lexical resource, grammatical range and accuracy, and your pronunciation. So I want to get started with your fluency and coherence. What was really nice about your answers is that you always had something to say, right? You always came up with something. And even if you struggled on some parts, you always had a good introductory sentence. For example, I think it was in part 3 where you had this one question where you started by kind of stalling with using these introductory sentences. I have to think about this. I don't know, really, I'm not an expert. And then you went on. And that was very smart, right? Buying yourself some time is great because you kind of, you know, you can say something without really going into detail topic, right? And that's great, right? I mean, you should always make some kind of a reference to the question, of course. And if it is in part 3 and you really don't know what to say, you can go off topic. I'm just saying, you know, you have to get there coherently and still reference the question somehow. But you did that and that was great. Okay, so overall, you had a very nice fluency and coherence. You always seem to know where you wanted to go with your answer. Part 2 had a very nice topic development, so that was very nicely done. You also used a range of connectives, and that was great. Always keep in mind to use as wide a range of connectives and discourse markers as you can. For example, like you said, for instance, however, even though, to be honest, I guess, from my perspective and so on, just to name a few, you know. So just be aware that you don't repeat, let's say, your favorite ones too many times, because sometimes people tend to, you know, use one of these specific ones or overuse these. So always keep an eye on that. But I would say you did pretty well today. The only thing that I will say is I think when it comes to your fluency and coherence, what holds you back a little bit is your pace. Because in some parts you're talking very fast, and that causes some repetition, hesitation, as well as self-correction, right? So I think what could help you is slowing it down a little bit for now to kind of structure your thoughts a little bit more, to be 100% sure that you can coherently and fluently develop your topic, have a nice, long, coherent answer. And if that works out and if everything's understandable, then you can maybe speed up a little bit more again. But I would always recommend you to find a medium pace for your IELTS, because that really helps you to avoid making any unnecessary mistakes. And, you know, you mostly sound clearer when you're, you know, talking a little bit slower. So that may be something that can help your little bit of hesitations that you still had here and there. It's not a lot. I'm just saying, you know, you can maybe try to figure out how to reduce that even more. So for your fluency and coherence today, I gave you a 7. Now for your lexical resource, I would say that you definitely have a wide enough range of vocabulary to really express what you want to say and to make meaning very clear, and that's great. Sometimes your expressions are not 100% correct, or sometimes you're forgetting about little things. For example, you said outdoor instead of the outdoors, right? Needs an S. These are just very typical things that sometimes you want to throw in these expressions or collocations, and they're not 100% correct. So always keep an eye on that. I mean, it's great that you do want to use these. We had some very nice ones in there that you used correctly. So this is something that you can also practice, you know. I mean, you have still a lot of time left. Practice bringing in some more idioms and collocations. I mean, as long as we're just practicing, you can also take some risks and see, something like, I learned this expression right now. Let's see if I know how to work it into my answer actually and have it done correctly in the end. Another thing is, I think you can also use some more topic related vocabulary. I mean, of course, you cannot always be familiar with every single topic and have topic specific vocabulary for that, right? But you know, if you can find some, or when you go off topic in any case, try to throw in some topic specific words there. Okay, one last thing for your lexical resource is your paraphrasing. That is pretty important. I would say you did not have a lot of repetition in there because you do have a nice range of vocabulary, and you try to show me that. However, I do think that you can still do more. I always say that you can never paraphrase enough, right? So always keep in mind to rephrase both your own words and the questions. That's crucial. For example, in part 3, I asked you for advantages. This is where you could answer with, you know, some benefits of this are, and then you go on. And just like that, you immediately show to the examiner that you know that you not only understood the full question, but you can even rephrase it. All right, I gave you a 6 for lexical resource because I do think that you can bring in some more of this topic related vocabulary, as well as some idioms and collocations. Okay, now for your grammar and accuracy, I think you have very nice grammar actually, right? Because you always had a lot of different complex structures in there, and you knew how to use them correctly. Same goes for your tenses, and that was great, right? Because you should have this wide range of complex structures. For example, you use some relative clauses, some conditional clauses. I think you even heard a passive structure in there, so that was great. I think when it comes to your tenses, you still had a bit of self-correction there, because sometimes you're maybe not 100% sure. And this is again where your pace comes in, because I think when you slow down a little bit, you have a second or two more to think about what tense to use now, and you might be able to avoid some mistakes. Because sometimes, for example, in part 2, you were still using present tense where it was supposed to be past. So for example, you said, I live on a farm my first 10 years. That would be I lived, right? Or have lived. So that's in the past. So keep it in the past with your tense. All right. And yeah, so overall sentence structure is fine. Just a few general hints that I heard you make as well. Sometimes there are a lot of like these typical mistakes that people forget about their plural s, or the third person s. For example, you said a teacher who go to the farm. A teacher is one person, so a teacher who goes to a farm, right? So plural s, third person s, and your prepositions as well, right? These are like little things in your grammar that sometimes just get lost kind of because you have a million things to talk to think about at once, and these, you know, tiny little things, then sometimes you forget about these. So that's why I always just mention them to keep an eye on these. Nonetheless, I gave you 7 in your grammar and accuracy because I think you have a very nice sentence structure, and you know, it's just about polishing up these little things that I just talked about. Okay, now for your pronunciation. Overall, you do have a good idea of how to pronounce your words to make everything clear and avoid any misunderstandings. That was great. You also had a nice rhythm in there because you nicely connected the sounds of the words, and that brought a nice flow of speech in there. I would only say that sometimes maybe because you were talking so fast, some words were a little bit unclear, and that made it sometimes hard to understand if you had just an unclear pronunciation, or maybe that if you made a mistake, right? So always be very sure to pronounce everything very clearly. That also goes for a very typical thing is when you are fluent in English, a lot of people say gonna and wanna. I would recommend not doing that in your IELTS test, because that is considered to be a pronunciation error. And then the next thing is your intonation. I think you have a good idea of how to have a good melody in your voice and to sound conversational. However, I think in the instances where you're kind of hesitating, this is where your voice drops a little bit and you start to sound rather monotone, right? So always be sure you speak up and be confident and have this nice melody and intonation in there that I know you know how to do, right? So just be confident about it. I think that's always key to a lot of things. Confidence really helps you to sound more natural and conversational in the end. So I gave you 6 for your pronunciation. That means that you got an overall 6.5 for today. I do think that you definitely have what it takes to get to a 7, as long as you put some work and effort in, right? It's just about perfecting a few things here and there that are specific to IELTS. You do have a good command of English, and I do believe that, you know, if you just work on it a little bit, you still have a lot of time left, that you can for sure get up to the score that you need in the end. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Cool. You're very welcome. Do you have any questions now?
No, everything is clear. Thank you so much.
Yes. Okay, that's good to hear. So what did you think of your test today? Was it useful for you?
Yes, I think it's very useful. Sometimes when you take the IELTS, you don't have an idea what you did right and what you did wrong. So I think this is very useful because I'm gonna have, you know, the chance to improve. And yeah, thank you so much. I was very nervous, you know, the beginning that
That's
it's
totally
something that you
normal.
need to, yeah.
No, I understand. And that's why I always say it's a good idea to take these mock tests, right? Because, you know, trying it out, what your nerves do to you in a mock test is better than doing it in the actual test, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, right. And would it be okay for you if we shared this video on our YouTube channel?
Yes, no problem.
All right, thank you so much. Great. So if you don't have anything else for me, that's it for today. We can say goodbye now. I'll send you the email in a few minutes with the video, right? And then you can just download it and rewatch the video if you like, okay?
Okay, thank you very
All
much.
right.
Have a good
You're very
day.
welcome. You too. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.